The text message arrived by mistake, and it changed everything. Claire Morgan was waiting for coffee in downtown Portland when her phone buzzed. A family group chat she'd barely spoken anymore suddenly lit up. Someone had shared a colorful image, filled with flowers, soft pink tones, and smiling emojis. At the top, bold letters read, "Mother's Day brunch at Lily's Sunday, 11 a.m." Claire smiled at first. Then her smile froze. She scanned the message again. Names were listed underneath, tagged one by one. Her sister Lily, her brother Mark, Mark's wife, aunts, cousins, even a neighbor she barely knew. Claire's name wasn't there. She waited, thinking maybe another message would follow. Maybe this was only part one. Maybe her phone was lagging. She refreshed the screen. Nothing. The barista called her order. But Claire didn't move. Her heart beat faster, not from shock, but from recognition. This feeling wasn't new. It was the same quiet sting she had carried for years, only sharper now because it was so clear. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Claire took her coffee and stepped outside into the cold morning air. Cars passed. People laughed. Life moved on like nothing had happened. She stood there holding a cup she no longer wanted, wondering how something so small could hurt so much. At 34, Claire was used to being the odd one out in her family. She didn't work in an office. She didn't wear neat cardigans or talk about promotions. She was a tattoo artist, a good one. Her calendar was always full. Her work was clean, meaningful, and careful. Her mother, Margaret Morgan, never liked that part. Margaret never shouted or disowned her. She did something quieter, something harder to fight. She smiled politely and changed the subject. She introduced Claire as still figuring things out. She asked when Claire planned to get a real job, even after 10 successful years. Claire learned to ignore it. She told herself love came in different forms. She kept showing up. She never missed a holiday. She brought flowers. She remembered birthdays. She sat at family tables where conversations slowed when she spoke about her work. She laughed anyway. She stayed anyway, so being excluded from Mother's Day felt like a line had finally been crossed. Later that afternoon, her sister Lily called. "Hey," Lily said carefully. "Did you see the brunch thing?" "Yes," Claire answered. "There." Was silence on the line? "Mom thought it might be better this year," Lily finally said. She didn't want questions. "You know how some people are?" Claire leaned against the wall of her studio, staring at a half-finished sketch on her tablet. "Questions about what?" she asked, though she already knew. Lily sighed. "About your job." Claire let out a quiet breath. "So I don't fit the picture." "That's not what she said," Lily replied quickly. She just wants the day to be peaceful." Claire almost laughed. Peaceful for whom? They ended the call politely, like nothing was wrong. Claire hung up and stood there for a long moment. Round her, machines buzzed. A client waited patiently. Life demanded she keep going, and she did. But something inside her shifted that night. Claire went home and sat alone in her apartment. Her walls were covered with art. Sketchbooks lay open on the table. Every line she had ever drawn carried someone's story. She had spent her life helping others feel seen. Yet her own mother couldn't look at her without discomfort. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't throw anything. She just felt tired. Tired of proving herself. Tired of shrinking her pride so others could feel comfortable. The next morning, Claire woke up before her alarm. She stared at the ceiling as the decision formed quietly, without drama. She wouldn't argue. She wouldn't explain. She wouldn't beg. She would step away. That same week, she accepted a guest artist spot at a respected studio in Vancouver, Canada. It was supposed to be temporary, just a few months. She had delayed it before, worried about family events, birthdays, holidays. This time she didn't hesitate. Mother's Day arrived, warm and bright. Claire packed her car before sunrise. No messages, no goodbyes. She left the keys to her apartment with a friend and drove north as the sky slowly turned pink. On the highway, with music low and coffee beside her, Claire felt something unexpected. Relief back at Lily's house. Flowers filled the table. Margaret sat at the center, smiling for photos. At first, she didn't notice the empty chair. Someone poured juice. Someone laughed, then Lily glanced around. Did Claire say she wasn't coming? Lily asked casually. Margaret stiffened just a little. She's busy, she replied. You know her. They moved on. But later, when dishes were cleared and guests left, Margaret stood alone in the kitchen. She looked at the unused place setting. A strange feeling settled in her chest, one she quickly pushed away. Claire was an adult. She would get over it. Weeks passed, no messages from Claire. At first, Margaret didn't worry. Claire often needed space. But then summer arrived. No call, no visit. Lily asked again. Mark shrugged. She's probably working, he said. But something felt different. In Vancouver, Claire built a new routine. The studio welcomed her without hesitation. No one asked her to explain her choices. They judged her only by her work. Clients trusted her hands, complimented her skill, thanked her sincerely for the first time. Claire didn't feel like a problem to manage. She stopped checking her phone so often. The silence from home became normal. Comfortable even. Back in Oregon, that silence grew heavy. Margaret opened her phone one evening, scrolling through old photos. Claire as a child, smiling wide, holding crayons. Claire at graduation, hopeful and proud. Margaret frowned, trying to remember when things had started to feel so distant. She told herself she had only wanted what was best. But deep down, another thought whispered, what if best had meant control? The thought unsettled her. Claire, meanwhile, stood by the harbor one night, watching the lights ripple across the water. She didn't feel angry anymore. She felt calm. Sad? Yes. But also clear. She hadn't disappeared to punish anyone. She disappeared because staying had started to hurt more than leaving. And for the first time in her life, she chose herself. The silence stretched on, and somewhere between pride and regret, her mother finally realized something she had never expected to face. Claire might not come back. The first night in Vancouver, Claire Morgan realized she had never been this free. The city was gray with a soft drizzle, streets glistening under streetlights, and the harbor smelled faintly of salt and possibility. She carried her suitcase into the small apartment she had rented for 3 months, setting it down beside a stack of sketchbooks. For the first time in years, she didn't feel judged. No one would tell her she was too unconventional, too loud, too different. Here, she existed as she was, Claire Morgan, tattoo artist, independent, capable, and unapologetic. The next morning, she walked into the studio for her first shift. The scent of fresh ink and the low hum of machines greeted her. Clients came in with anticipation. People who had driven across the city just to sit in her chair. Every tattoo she created was a story, a memory pressed onto skin. And in their trust, she found herself reflected back. She wasn't invisible. She mattered. By midweek, Claire discovered a small cafe tucked between 2 bookstores. She went there to escape the buzz of the studio, to sip tea and write in her sketchbook. It was in this quiet place that she met Daniel Brooks. He was standing near the counter, scanning books with a thoughtful look, and when he glanced up, he noticed the intricate ink on Claire's hands. Your work, he said, his voice soft but confident. It's beautiful. Every line tells a story. Claire froze. She wasn't used to compliments without judgment, without someone trying to correct her or shrink her ambition. Thanks, she said, cautiously. They talked for hours, mostly about the small things, coffee blends, favorite authors, the quirks of the city. But slowly, the conversation deepened. Claire shared her life carefully, sparingly, leaving out the parts that still hurt too much to say aloud. Daniel listened, genuinely. He asked questions, but never pressed too hard. There was no expectation, no comparison, no judgment. Over the next weeks, Daniel and Claire began to see each other often. Walks along the harbor, shared dinners at tiny restaurants, tucked down alleys, and long afternoons at bookstores. She realized she was laughing more than she had in years. Not the polite laugh of someone trying to fit in, but the quiet, effortless kind that rises from the chest and lingers. One evening, Claire finally told Daniel the truth about why she had come to Vancouver. She told him about the missed Mother's Day brunch. Think the empty messages, the exclusion, and the silence from her family that had grown unbearable. She told him how she had packed her car before sunrise and driven north, seeking a space where she could be herself. Daniel didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He only said that kind of exclusion leaves a bruise, even when no one sees it. Claire had never felt someone understand her so completely. It was a relief she didn't know she needed. As summer gave way to autumn, Claire's work flourished. Clients came from other cities just to be tattooed by her. Word of her skills spread quickly, and she began to fill her schedule weeks in advance. She loved the challenge, the connection, the intimacy of the work. And Daniel remained a constant, a soft presence that grounded her without constraining her. Back in Oregon, Margaret Morgan began to notice the absence. At first, she told herself it was temporary. Claire was an adult. She had her own life. But as weeks turned into months, the empty chair at family dinners, the unanswered calls, the missing messages began to weigh heavily. She asked Lily again, hoping for reassurance, but Lily could only shrug. Mark avoided the subject altogether. Margaret couldn't shake the feeling that she had miscalculated, that the exclusion she had thought was harmless had become something much bigger. Every picture of Mother's Day brunches, every social media post from other family gatherings, felt like a reminder that Claire had chosen not to come back. Meanwhile, Claire thrived in her new life. She discovered parts of herself she had never allowed to exist. She went on hikes alone, exploring the forests surrounding Vancouver, sketchbook in hand, finding inspiration in the quiet beauty around her. She spent evenings cooking meals for herself, music filling her apartment, and mornings walking along the waterfront before heading into the studio. The city became a canvas for her freedom. One cold evening, Daniel asked her if she ever missed home. Claire looked at him, her gaze steady, thoughtful. "I miss the idea of it," she said. "Not the version where I had to shrink to fit in." Daniel reached for her hand, simply holding it, grounding her in the present. In that small gesture, Claire realized she had created a life that was not just about survival, but about thriving. By late autumn, Margaret finally attempted to reach out. She wrote a long letter, full of apologies, hesitant confessions, and awkward attempts at understanding. Claire read it carefully, the letter trembling in her hands. She didn't feel anger. She felt a calm, measured distance. Not bitterness. Not rage. Just the quiet acknowledgement that the person she had been running to no longer existed in the same space. Claire replied with kindness. But she did not make promises she didn't mean. "I love you," she wrote, "but I need space to stay who I am." She hit send and leaned back, a weight lifted. She had protected herself without malice, without needing to explain beyond what was necessary. In Vancouver, her days continued to be full of color, ink, and life. Daniel remained a gentle companion, someone who admired her independence and never asked her to compromise it. He was a presence, not a possession, and Claire cherished it. She built a routine that filled her with energy and purpose. She was finally recognized not for what she wasn't, but for all that she was. Margaret, reading the reply, felt a pang she had never expected. Her daughter had left, but she hadn't left angrily or rebelliously. She had left to find a space where she could exist fully, where she could be herself without compromise. And that was something Margaret had never been able to give her. As winter approached, Claire walked along the harbor one evening, watching the lights of the city shimmer on the water. She thought about her family, about the life she had left behind, about the years spent shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. She realized she didn't regret leaving. She had learned that sometimes survival required absence. She hadn't disappeared to punish anyone. She had disappeared to live, to find herself. to exist without apology and in the quiet of the city, surrounded by water, sky, and soft lights. Claire finally understood the truth she had been seeking all along. She had always been enough, even when the people who should have seen it could not. The freedom wasn't just physical. It was emotional. It was the knowledge that her life didn't need validation from those unwilling to understand her. And in that freedom, she discovered the most profound form of love. Self-acceptance. Claire didn't look back. Not really. She sent occasional updates to Daniel about her work, small photos of tattoos she was proud of, glimpses of life she had built. Margaret read them, hoping to catch a piece of her daughter's world. But Claire's world was no longer one of accommodation. It was full, vibrant, and entirely her own. And in that space, Claire finally learned to breathe freely, love freely, and live freely, knowing she had made the hardest choice a person could make, to choose herself.